When things went terribly awry, she didn't literally or figuratively lose her head, and she would go into sanctuary and basically bide her time.
Maybe she was one of the first political women in a very large sense of the word, because it was for women to be involved directly in politics, it was unheard of.
My name's Angela Ellis, and I'm an adjunct assistant professor of history at the University at Albany.
My name is Camilla Leonard, and I'm a lecturer in the history department of the University of Albany here.
Well, the Wars of the Roses didn't get that name until I think the early 19th century, but what they are is a series of intermittent civil wars that occurred in England in the late 15th century. And at heart, their cause was a weak crown. When there's a king who can't keep his overmighty subjects in check, they start getting ambitious and they use their resources, their money, their influence.
It was a war involving cousins, brothers, sisters, mistresses, everyone who was there busy with something.
That set off a whole series of disputed successions. Elizabeth Woodville was the wife of the Yorkist king Edward IV.
Okay, she is probably the most awesome character because she was a woman.
She was a widowed gentlewoman from the Midlands. She was from Northamptonshire.
As you know, the class system in England was very clearly divided.
And she had previously been married to a knight who had been a Lancastrian. So it was a little bit awkward that she ended up married to a Yorkist king. Somehow he is taken with her beauty and other charms, and against the advice of his mother, Cecily Neville, against the advice of his uncle and closest advisor, the Earl of Warwick, known as the Kingmaker, he marries this subject rather than marrying, say, a French princess, which would come with all sorts of diplomatic and political advantages. He's the first English king to marry one of his own subjects since 1045, when Edward the Confessor married Edith of Wessex.
I think that she made it through all this chaotic time because she was extremely intelligent.
It was clear that she had the king's heart and the king's ear, and when things went terribly awry, she didn't literally or figuratively lose her head, and she would go into sanctuary and basically bide her time.
So she had an intelligence, she had connections, she had a large family. Okay, this came with a price. You remember that her mother was accused of witchcraft. And all her brothers and relatives became quite powerful during the reign of her husband. So all of them tried to help her as well. And what I think Elizabeth knew very well is to adapt to her times. Namely, she played a political role without being highly visible. And I think that's a very important thing.
Probably one of the most interesting political intrigues that she involved herself in was actually after she had been widowed for the second time. Edward IV is dead, and she decides that she's going to ally herself with Margaret Beaufort. Margaret Beaufort is the mother of the future Henry VII, the Lancastrian claimant to the throne. She and Elizabeth decide that the best way to advantage both of their families and end this series of civil wars is to marry him to Elizabeth's oldest daughter, Elizabeth of York, who had become heir on the death of all of her brothers.
She was conventional but not conventional. A woman with high, and I think definitely there is a lot of intelligence and power, and I think she used more her intelligence and her strength, inner strength, more than her beauty, to achieve what she wanted to achieve and to stay safe and to survive all that absolutely mad time.
They were powerful women, they were bright women, they were politically savvy women, but I think to be a feminist, you have to argue for systematic changes in the gender hierarchy. And I'm not convinced that they would have done that. They wanted to make the most of their opportunities to navigate craftily, but if you had sat them down and said, do you want there to be a world where women are equal to men, I think that just would have been beyond their comprehension. It would have been so far from the culture that they were raised in that it just really wouldn't have been conceivable.
I completely agree that Elizabeth Woodville was a very unique woman, and definitely, let's say, the first grandmother of feminism in Europe, at least.